can see you clearly.
Hi, my little witchy babies. You are listening to the 4th episode of Tutia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your host. So this week, I'm really excited to introduce you to someone who is just a guiding light. So I've been fortunate enough to work on the podcast Dear Franny for a year now. I'm the editor, I'm the producer. Francesca Hogi, who goes by Franny, is a recovering lawyer, a reality TV personality. She did 2 stints on Survivor. She was a matchmaker, but now she's a love coach. And in her spare time, she even does sound baths. She is always just providing knowledge. Her show, Dear Franny, each week gives lessons about love and just has unconventional conversations about love and really just helps you see that love is not the fairy tale that we all thought it was. And that's okay. I'm going to stop talking because I really want you to get into this episode. Franny, thank you so much for being on Tutia Bruja. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you, Bex. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm going to light a blue candle just to kind of create a vibe. It's the Scorpio full moon tonight, so this is a good time to just be like letting go of things that have made you feel heavy for a really long time.
I saw the moon last night here in Los Angeles was so amazing. Like the sky, because even before the moon started rising, I was like, wow, the light today is really incredible. And one of the benefits of the lockdown is that, our air quality is really, really good because normally there's so many cars on the road and now, that's not the case. So the air is so crisp, so clean. The sky is so blue. And the moon rise last night was astounding. It just took my breath away. So anyway, that's just to say that I'm really excited about tonight's full moon.
I'm totally there with you in the quarantine or lockdown or whatever you want to call it. Just watching the environment, our planet just heal itself it's a reminder that we have the ability to take care of it, but there's all these structures in place that don't allow us to.
Yes, absolutely.
So just finding ways each of us can do our part to change up things a little bit. I really admire you, Franny, for a lot of reasons. And one of the things is you've lived such a life. And I wonder sometimes if you ever look back and you're just like, oh, wow, I did do that in this life.
Yes, totally. And thank you. You're so sweet. I think it's just a function of being old. Just you wait till you're my age and you'll see. Yes, I absolutely do. And I don't have the greatest memory for a lot of things, but I've got friends, like very old, dear friends who have a great memory. My mom and my sister have a great memory. So I tell them, I'm like, I need all of you guys to recreate my life and piece it all together. But yeah, I'll definitely be reminded of, a time in my life or a job that I had. I mean, I've had so many jobs, experience that I had, and I'm just like, wow, I feel like such a different person in so many ways that it's almost hard for me to remember what it was like to be me at that stage. But I'm actually pretty fascinated with personal journeys in general. And I love hearing stories of people's journeys. And I actually also really love reflecting on my own. It teaches me a lot of lessons, brings a lot of clarity for me.
Like you said, very clarifying to hear about people's life journeys. And it gives you something to aspire to. We met online, which I think is one of the cool things about the internet, is you can meet all different types of people. One of the things that you've done is you were on Survivor a couple of times, and I didn't know that until it was mentioned on the show. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I did go through a phase where I was really into reality TV.
For me, my first reality TV love was The Real World. And because I'm that old, I remember when The Real World first came on, back in the 80s. It was the late 80s.
What's the season you remember the most that really resonated with you?
New York and San Francisco. Those were the seasons that were the most impactful for me. And then I was also the London season. I spent a semester in London when I was in college, and I lived in the same neighborhood as the Real World cast. They were there at the same time. So I used to see them around and stuff. So a special affinity for that season because it just, reminded me of my life in London at that time. But New York and San Francisco, I would go so far as to say that they were formative. They were older than me, because I can't exactly remember when the first season came out. Maybe I was in college, but I was maybe I was 17 or, 16 or something like that. And they were 21, and so they weren't that much older than me, but they were old enough to have freedom and to be living on their own and to be having, these experiences that I didn't have because I was still living at home. And it gave me like a window into like, I can be like any kind of young person in the world I want to be, you know? So I think that that show had a big impact on me. But what I'm really into are any kind of shows where people have like a very high level of talent. So like I love every fashion designer show, but like I want like the real designers who really know what they're doing. Like I don't want to see amateurs making clothes. I want to see like very seasoned, talented designers. So like I love Project Runway and Next in Fashion. It's designers making clothes, I'll watch it, which is interesting because it's not even like I'm so into fashion. I just like the process of that creativity. I love seeing their thought process and see how they're like, okay, you've got 12 hours to make a couture ball gown, go. And they're like, shit. But then they do it. And I'm like, how did they, I just think that's like the coolest. But yes, so it inspires me. But I would say in general, yes, most reality television is not too inspiring.
There are people who can just sew things together and you're like, wow, you're just a thread witch or something. Like you can make things.
Yeah, totally.
And it's just, it has this component to it where it's not even just a piece of clothing. It just shows so much of themselves.
Yes. It's just miraculous. Yes.
Yeah. I'm all about any way that shows people this is different and this is me. Those are some that I tend to binge. I've been trying to get into a creative kind of mindset during this time. I took out my sewing machine. I've been getting deeper into witchcraft, which I know that if anybody follows me on social media knows that this has been an ongoing thing. I'll talk to my parents. I'm getting more into witchcraft. They're like, hasn't this been a thing?
How is that possible?
My big thing has been trusting the universe. And the universe is going to introduce you to people and introduce you to things. Honestly, in my life, that's been a big thing that's been happening because I met you. And then you on your podcast that we work on together had Marcella Kroll on.
Yes.
I love her.
She's the best.
She really is. She has this quote that I really love, that the only authority I've ever been able to follow is witchcraft.
Yes, yes.
And it's so true. The world and the universe, good or bad, it's going to help you through it. It's trusting that. I know that you both have a very amazing friendship, and she's the one who created your Oracle deck.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. She's since created, she has a couple of decks now, but the first one that she created, and she did a few different versions of it, is called Sacred Symbols. And she gifted me my first copy of it because I actually wound up buying like every subsequent edition. And at that time, I think somebody had given me like an angel deck once, like years before. And it just like, I don't know, I think like angels don't really resonate with me. I know a lot of people have angel and archangel, like real connection and practice, but it just didn't resonate with me. So I was kind of like, oh, like I had this deck. Maybe I pulled one card 2 times in like, the many years that I had it. But when Marcella gave me her deck, I think it was a combination of the timing and also just her talent, but it just spoke to me. And I was not a person before I'd gotten that deck. If somebody had said to me like, oh, you're going to be a person who turns to an Oracle deck for guidance, I'd be like, probably not, like not that I was the least likely person in the world. Cause I've definitely, I'm open. I believe in the power of the universe. And, I've been on a spiritual journey for a long time, but just not necessarily so much on like maybe the intuitive side or the witchy side, right? More of just on the like personal development, law of attraction, really know yourself, know your truth, create your own reality side. Anyway, but that deck, I've pulled I pulled cards millions of times and it's never failed me. Never. Like anytime I'm like, okay, I just want a little guidance in general, or I want an answer to a specific question. I do readings for other people. I've done actually tons of readings for other people, and including like strangers, because there's a time I would like literally walk around with my deck. I've done like readings for strangers in bars. I have just gone on Facebook and been like, I'll just do readings for the first 20 people who comment on this post. And then I'll just, just do readings for 20 people, some of whom I may know and some of whom I don't. So I've done a lot of these, and everyone, maybe 1 or 2 people who are kind of like, I can see that. But most people are like, oh shit, like that is scarily accurate. And I'm like, I know. I don't know why. I can't explain it. It's not me. It's the cards.
Give yourself more credit. I think it's you too.
I don't know.
Well, okay. I dabble in tarot a little bit, but Oracle decks are, of course, of a different color
Yes.
because they're all different. 44 is traditionally the most common number, but you can have decks that have 20 cards. You can have decks that have 100 cards. It really depends, I guess, on the artist. And I think that that's possibly why you really connected with it. They say that with Oracle decks, you should really connect with the imagery, or if you know the artist personally, because it makes it just that much more intimate
Yeah.
for you to use. So that makes a lot of sense.
And Marcella, she does all of the artwork herself for her decks. Like, she's an artist in addition to being an amazing intuitive and healer. They really do have like her spirit in them, you know?
And there really truly is something about something that was made by a person as opposed to manufactured by corporation or whatever. And I mean, I think that that should be kind of a given, but it's like you're putting a little bit of, I don't want to say your soul because it sounds really ominous. You're putting a little bit of your love into it, and it really does help people interpret it.
Totally. Like your vibe, you know, like Marcella, when she has a new deck of cards come back from the printer, like she waits till full moon, she puts them all in the moonlight, she prays over them, like she does a ritual before she even sells them. Like, she's that intentional about making sure that her cards like really have the intention behind it that she wants, which is really to help people to heal and to be guided by their own, you know, inner wisdom and their spirit guides and the universe. And, you know, it's beautiful.
Because that's, in my opinion, that's all divination is. It's just a way of getting more in touch with your intuition and having the universe guide you in ways that you didn't even know you could be guided, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
So you said you had dabbled with another deck. Were there any other witchy things that you remember being interested, like when you were younger? Because I don't know about you, maybe this is a common thing, but I remember as a kid throwing like a bunch of leaves and maybe some rose petals into a puddle and mixing it around like I was a witch.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
I manifested it.
That's awesome. No, not as a kid. Definitely not as a kid. I think actually as a kid, you know, first of all, I grew up in, you know, a family where we went to church every Sunday and we like said grace before dinner every night and we said our prayers before we went to bed every night. And so I just think that I wouldn't have necessarily had, not that you could obviously grow up in that environment and still be influenced by anything, but I don't think I had as a child any like particular interest in anything witchy. And if anything, I think that probably what I kind of knew about witchcraft, I mean, witchcraft gets like the worst rap ever, you know, in our media and our culture and in our history. So I think if anything, I probably, like if you'd asked me at like, I don't know, age 9, like, what do you think of witches? I would have been like, ooh, scary, you know? Yeah. So that's why I think kind of part of why I needed time to just evolve my thinking, and I had to go on my own spiritual journey and leave like Christianity behind and like just reject all of that and really decide for myself what I believed. And that, you know, that's a journey that started when I was in my 20s. So I think at that phase on is where I was more interested in things, but it wasn't like, I mean, I'd had a couple, you know, I wish I could find the tape of this because I was somewhere in my early 20s, I had a psychic reading and it was pretty like out of character for me to go see like a psychic, like a real psychic. I think, you know, I paid her probably like $150, which was like a lot of money, you know, at that time. But she recorded our session. And I remember her telling me some things that I was just like, this lady is crazy. Like, not that, I mean, she said a lot of things that really resonated with me, but there are things that she was predicting about my future that I was just like, that's not going to happen. Like, that's not going to happen. And like, I remember her saying that like, I was going to be like in my later life, I was going to be like extremely successful and influential. And she's like, you're going to have influence on millions of people. And I was like, what? Like, it was so beyond like what I could even perceive of my life at that time that I was like, there was something in me that was like, maybe it's right. But then my mind was going like, that's crazy. There's no way she could know this. Like, this is ridiculous. So I dabble, but then I'd be like, no, that can't be right. You know? And she said a bunch of other things that at the time seemed like so far-fetched. And not that I have influence of millions, but my point is that like at that time that seemed like there's no path for me to ever even have that. And now I'm like, oh, there is a path for me to have that. You know, whether I do or not is not really the point. I guess the point is just that like, yeah, it made an impression on me, but I still didn't really go into the witchy thing too much for a long time.
And like you said earlier, I think for people at their levels, some people just need spiritual like guidance or whatever. Like some people are searching for answers. Some people want to create their own answers. You know, there's levels to it. We have the same undergrad. At the time that we met, I was sort of just like, something's got to give, you know, like something's got to give. And it was just so amazing to hear like, oh my God, like this person that, you know, has accomplished all these things and been able to find her path has been wonderful. Because I think most people, young people, they go through a time where they're just like, I don't know what I want to do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was beyond young when I was still saying that. Like, I was, my first real, I went to law school and then I didn't ever really want to be a lawyer. When I graduated from college, what I really wanted to do at that time was I wanted to make movies and I wanted to be a producer. Actually, what I really wanted to be was a director, but I didn't have enough confidence in myself to think that I could do that. So I was like, I'll be a producer. It just seemed like less pressure and more administrative. So I felt more comfortable with that, less creative, less like spotlight on you. And I thought about, should I go to film school? And then I decided instead to go to law school for no good reason. And so I found myself, young lawyer in New York, working in a big firm, working crazy hours, just like having this life that they call them like golden handcuffs because, they pay you good money. I was making a lot of money to be, as young as I was, And so you give these 24-year-olds like these 6-figure salaries and perks and this and that. And then we start to get attached to that. And then our lifestyle becomes that. And then you're like, shit, this is crushing my soul, but I can't afford to leave. Those are the golden handcuffs. So I saw that was happening and I saw how easily that could happen. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I can't do this forever. Like, I can't. This is not the life that I want for myself. So I moved to LA and I started a film production company. So that was my first leap, I guess, out of the traditional. And I did that with a friend of mine from law school. And he and I, we slogged away at it for a bit. We never made any money. I was doing a bunch of like production jobs to like, make money. And it was just a really hard path. And I was like, I don't really like the movie business. I don't like Hollywood. I don't like having to pretend that people are cool or special just because they are connected or some big shot. Like, I just hated that whole schmoozing thing. Like, it just was not me. And so I'm like, you know what? I love movies. I can just watch them. I don't have to make them. So I went back into the law and then I was stuck because then I was like, well, now what do I do? Like, at least before I had this idea of something that I always wanted to do. And well, not always, but at least like since college. And now it's gone. So now I'm really stuck. So once I went back to the law, I stayed there for like 10 years because I didn't know what else to do. And it was 10 years of me being like, I don't know what to do with my life. And I remember at one point, this is like pretty embarrassing to think about it now, but like at one point I literally like created a survey based on like what people thought I should do for a living. And I like gave it to all of my coworkers. I was like, can you please weigh in on what you think my strengths and my weaknesses are and what I should be doing with my life? Like, that's pretty pathetic, right? Yeah, it was a long time before I started to trust in the universe more and look for the signs and follow the things that I was interested in and I was naturally talented at, and then, really taking a leap into those things. But I'm a very late bloomer. That's the title of my one-day memoir, Late Bloomer.
Well, you also really like plants. So I think that it's especially appropriate.
It's true. It's true.
And I'm a creative type. And, I want to be able to just create and not feel that pressure of like, you have to pay bills. So when we met, I think around that time is when I made the jump to freelancing. Trusting the universe, it really just helps you figure it all out at some point. So I'm just stop stressing about it.
It's just easier said than done sometimes. That's the thing. It's the practice of like really exercising that muscle, that trust muscle.
That is true. I've lucked out. I look at so many cool people around me where we're like vibrating at similar frequencies where it's like, we're just gonna, and it seems like it just keeps getting better. So maybe that's a sign in itself.
Yes.
I did also want to talk to you before I let you go, but you're getting into sound baths. How did that transition happen? Because you are so busy, you were a matchmaker, you're a love coach now, and you have a podcast, so you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
What got you interested in sound baths?
That was definitely just an example of just listening to my intuition and the universe just showing me signs. Well, the way that I even stumbled onto a sound bath in the first place was a very random thing. I just happened to I was in a place I wasn't normally, like it was in an office building downtown, and there happened to be a sound bath going on that day, like in the lobby of the office building. And I was like, what's a sound bath? And I asked like some receptionist, she's like, oh, it's so amazing. I hear it. I was like, oh, I want to do something amazing and relaxing. So I go to this sound bath and I'm like, oh, my mind was totally blown. And then I was like, oh my God, I gotta do this all the time. I have to have this feeling all the time. I felt so connected. I felt so relaxed. My mind was so quiet. I felt so like inspired and just like plugged into the source. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever experienced, basically. And so it so happens the woman who facilitated that sound bath, she had a sign up sheet for her email list. And I was like, yes, I'm just going to follow you around LA, which is basically what I did. And I just started going to as many sound baths as I could. And then, months later, I just checked my email and I don't always open my, marketing emails because I get so many of them, but I was just like, I'm just going to open this email. And it was from this woman, her name is Michelle Burke. And she said that she was doing a sound healing, like practitioner training. And it was that upcoming weekend and there were 2 spots left. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be here this weekend. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I just like immediately responded to her email and I was like, I'm in. Where do I send? How do I pay you? And I was kind of like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but just something in me was like, just do it. And so I know enough now to listen to myself when that happens. So I went and I'm like, I have no idea if I'm going to like this. I have no idea if I'm going to be any good at it. I just know for some reason I'm supposed to go do this. And so I did. And I really fell in love with facilitating them, not just experiencing them. Yeah. And then I just, as part of my training, because after I did like the weekend training course, then you had to do 10 individual sessions, like as part of your certification process. And I was like, okay, you know what? I spent this money. I did this training. Like I'm going to do the rest of it. Like I'm going to get certified. So that forced me to actually like buy crystal bowls and buy other instruments. And then once I did that, I think that just like, then I was like, hey guys, who wants to come over and have a sound bath? And a lot of people were like, me, Marcella came over for one. And I just got really good feedback from doing them. And some people had never had a sound bath before. And they were like, that was amazing. Some people had, and they were like, this is the best sound bath I've ever had. I'm like, what? So it just kind of just grew from there, really. And yeah, and then people just started inviting me, and I just do them mostly privately. So somebody, I'll, be like, hey, my girlfriend's having, a birthday brunch and she wants to know if you could come over and do a sound bath. Like, how much is that? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So it's just kind of taken on a little bit of a life of its own. But now, because of the lockdown and COVID-19, I've been doing them on Instagram every Sunday, and I'm just doing them, on Instagram Live. And I'm doing those because it's just like a way for me to give a little gift to the community. And, if people can come to my Instagram and just have 30, 40 minutes of relaxation and calming their nervous system and taking their mind off of all of the stress that's happening in the world, then that makes me happy.
I always find it very calming, and you have a very calming voice in itself, so it's always a very pleasant experience. So
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So if anybody is looking for, that, I would highly suggest it. Do you have a preference with your bowls? Do you do metal or crystal?
Yeah, I actually have all crystal bowls. So I have 7 bowls for all the 7 notes, 7 chakras. And I haven't gotten any metal bowls yet. I am personally just really in love with the sound of the crystal bowls. I'm not saying that I won't eventually get metal bowls. I've been with the sound healing from the beginning. I've been very much like, I'm taking baby steps. Like I'm just seeing how much I enjoy this. I'm seeing how much people are responding. Like I'm not trying to go all in and buy like gongs and all this stuff is actually very expensive. So the bowls were quite an investment. So my crystal bowls were. So I have those, and I have a few drums, and I have some chimes. So I have a few instruments, but I just am in a rhythm of using what I have, and that feels really good to me. So I haven't felt the need to expand out and, start to incorporate any of the Tibetan bowls, which are the metal ones, but they're cool. I just prefer the crystal.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds really pretty. And it does kind of give you this really cool, I don't know how to explain it, but almost like a tingly feeling down your spine of just releasing tension.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's supposed to do.
Oh, good. So that's what it's doing.
It's supposed to be a physical experience of your nervous system relaxing. Like, you don't have to do anything but lie there and it happens. Even if you fall asleep, you wake up and you feel refreshed. It's pretty cool.
It is really cool.
I mean, I would say that, like, if just, like you were just a person who's like not interested in doing this professionally, but just wanted to have a bowl for yourself, it's totally get a Tibetan bowl. I mean, they're much easier to find. They're much cheaper. The crystal bowls they're expensive. They're heavy. They're very fragile. I've already broken one. I had to replace it. I almost cried.
Oh, no.
And it's not like, I mean, you can order them on Amazon, but don't, because those are not what they say they are. So there's only a couple of reputable sellers of them in the world, of the crystal bowls. So you have to order from them, and it depends on their inventory. So it's a whole kind of pain in the butt. So I would recommend getting Tibetan bowl, because those are easy and you can get those lots of places and you don't have to worry about breaking them.
Yes, I'm very clumsy. So that's something I need to take note of. All right, Franny. Well, thank you so much for being here. You have so much wisdom to share, and I really appreciate you taking that time. Where can people keep up with you and, all the different things that you're doing and any upcoming projects that you might be working on?
So I'm working on our podcast. Thank you for being my amazing editor, producer of Dear Franny. So everybody can reach me. I'm on all social media at Dear Franny. Instagram is the place where I'm the most active these days. Also at Dear Franny Podcast on Instagram. And that will give you a good snapshot of what's going on with me. And in my bio, there's a link. I've got upcoming Zoom workshops around love and self-love, finding love, and those are free. And you can find a link to that in my bio. You can reserve a spot. I have my Sunday sound baths every Sunday on Instagram Lives. And that's pretty much that for now. And, just tune into Dear Franny Podcast. I'd be grateful.
Please do. It's really great. You learn something amazing every week. She's providing this wisdom, so take it in. All right, that was the episode. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Be sure and rate and subscribe if you are not already. Please, we love words of praise, and quite frankly, the first 2 weeks of a podcast are the most important. So the more reviews that you give us, the more people that see us. Also, if you want to support Franny, all the ways to support her are in the show notes. You can support me by going onto my website, bexbcaston.com. There you can see all the different ways that we can collaborate together. If you would like to get specifically involved with the show, there's a tab for Tutia Bruja. If you want to find me on social media, you can catch me at bexbcaston. And if you want to follow the podcast, it's Tutia Bruja. Thank you so much for listening. Try and get some rest, because the full moon is tonight. And quite frankly, the last 3 months have been very overwhelming for all of us. And there's an eclipse, and it's just, tonight's going to be wild. Get your favorite crystal, do you a ritual bath, do something that's going to keep you in a good space, drink some tea, masturbate, whatever. Anywho, I value you. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope you're learning stuff. I hope you're enjoying it. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.
I can see you clearly.